Hi, Sharon. Oh my gosh. Thank you for coming on. I feel like I already know you so well since we talked the other week for your podcast, but I'm thrilled to have you on because I absolutely love what you do. It's an amazing company, your Foodnerd, and your products are they're really good, but they are just so conscientious, which is like unbelievable and amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today and all of my listeners out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. This is super exciting. Thank you. I love yoga and I love anything vegan. So together I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get into your story, but what I think is so great, and we were talking a little bit off the air, but we'll get into your products and stuff. But like sometimes having food that's nutrient dense, and we'll talk about that word because I think a lot of people don't really quite even understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But having kind of easy go-tos that aren't not only aren't full of chemicals, but are full of things that you need blow my mind. And I think what blew my mind the most about the products that you sent me, which was so cool, thank you, is the fiber content.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was really cool. So let's get into like where you found, why you went vegan. Mm-hmm. And let's just kind of get into your story. We'll talk a little bit about yoga out there, yoga as well, and how all that kind of comes together in not only your vision for your business and your life, but just kind of how it's helped you just kind of manipulate or get through these times, especially in a pandemic. So I think they all kind of come together. But I love it. So I love when I can talk to somebody who's like, I'm like, oh, I want to geek out on food. I don't get to geek out on food enough. And I'm talking to a food nerd. So perfect. I can't wait to get schooled. So I hope everybody else likes it too. So yeah, let's start with your vegan journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
When that happened for you.
Yeah. So my vegan journey started when the path to it started when I was around like 14. I grew up with a mother that had multiple sclerosis and just lots of chronic disease throughout my family. But interesting enough, my mother has a sister that's just just a year younger than her. But they look decades apart in age, which really blew my mind. And my aunt at the time never ate meat. She rarely ate meat, especially not red meat growing up. She was actually allergic to it. And she just ate all organic foods. And my mom and the way that we were raised was the complete opposite. We grew up very much on welfare and eating, government food and, government cheese. I don't know if you know anything about that, but probably
we should talk about that.
Yeah, the most ultra processing in the world. I just remember that was a staple.
Wow.
Grilled cheese every day growing up in our diet. And and a ton of dairy. And so I just started kind of observing, and I was sad. I was sad watching my mom, just lose her mobility and just her health go down so quickly. And
yeah,
it broke my heart because I was so young at the time. And then my aunt, who was literally like running, and she was like more fit than I was. And she was smaller than me because she worked out every day. And it just blew my mind that they were a year apart. And I just knew, I knew my mom was going to live a shorter and much lower quality of life compared to her sister. And so I kind of just started observing my aunt and asking her, why don't you eat meat? And what, and kind of just like, it just turned something on in my head where I was just low key obsessed with trying to figure out what that difference was. And so it kind of started my journey where I was like, you know what, I'm going to cut out red meat too. And it was bizarre because I grew up on red meat. I mean, goulash was like, ground beef. We had that probably 4 times a week. And, in the low quality ground beef that is just, subsidized. And so, kind of starting with that, cutting out red meat. It was actually, I cut it out for like a 2-month period. And then because it wasn't ethical at that point, I ate it. I ate my mom's goulash like 2 months later, and my body rejected it. I actually like had to go to the hospital. I was having an allergic reaction to it. And
Wow.
it blew my mind that my body was responding and started rejecting the foods that I grew up eating my whole life. So then at that point I was like, you know what, I'm going to cut out all red meat. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to eat white meat. And then I kind of started researching, well, what is free range chicken? What does that actually mean? And this is really in my college, high school and college years. And I was like, well, is that really a difference? And then I was like, I found out all about that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to cut out all of that. And I'm just going to eat fish and vegetables. So I was pescatarian. And then I cut out fish, and then I was vegetarian for a few years. And then in end of college, early law school, that's when I became vegan, full vegan. And then throughout law school, I actually came predominantly raw vegan. And that's kind of where I'm at in my journey now. It's just conscious eating for nutrient density. That's really, I don't like to put labels on it because I feel like that's, especially for people, like myself, I'm a pretty extreme person, and trying to like define what I can and can't eat in these rigid structured names, I think is kind of where raw vegan or veganism in general gets a bad rap, because you start to tell people, like, you draw hard lines. And it becomes, something that's stressful versus like a blessing, and something that's great. And so it was kind of, it took me a little over 10 years to get there, but it was a slow, gradual, like cutting out of things based on the research I was learning. And it honestly did not become ethical until I would say my second year in law school. It didn't become ethical. And once it became ethical, it was like living. It was in every cell of my body, just the awareness behind my food and my choices just went to a whole new level. And, being able to feel that journey over the years, and how my body changed, and how everything about, my health changed. And, getting the reassurance from people that was kind of observing me, really showed me how powerful food is. And, it's what really started making me excited every day, just to tell people about what I was doing and give them little tips and tricks. So that's my vegan journey. It took me a while, but here I am.
Wow. That's a beautiful story. I mean, I think we're both similar, being influenced by our parents, and it kind of sparking that interest. Is your mom still with us?
She is.
She is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And did your sister just kind of live her life, or did she try to help? I mean, what do you do if you're on a low income? Eating quality food is a problem.
100%. The socioeconomic disparity in food is just something I'm very passionate about. One of the big things is that my mom's sister also was not, didn't have money. But what she did is she was educated on the choices. So instead of buying, cheap processed food, she went to the produce aisle and she bought all root vegetables. So she jokes and she's like, I just ate sweet potato, because she didn't want to eat the processed fake bread and cereals. So it was a conscious choice on her part. The difference that wasn't the money. They both didn't really have the funds to go eat at Whole Foods every day, but it was the education that was missing between my aunt and my mom. And my aunt, that's kind of where I got my advocacy from. She was always telling people, giving them books, talking to them about organic food and what it means. Like she was like so healthy, she glowed, and everybody always wanted to know what she was doing. So at Christmas, I remember she'd just give, books away on it, because, she wanted to influence others. But, just like everybody's on their own health journey, you could be told the same fact 20 times, but if that particular person tells it to you, you may receive it differently. And it just never clicked for my mom, honestly, until about 1.5 years ago. And she found plant-based. So,
wow.
Yeah, it took a while.
I mean, it's always so hopeful when you hear those stories, because sometimes I feel a little like hopeless about it. Okay, I'll answer these questions, but chances are you're not going to make a change. You're not going to do anything. We're just blah, blah talking right now.
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah, so when you do hear that, no, you know, a shift happened, and has it helped her?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ways that it actually, and this is where I'm also really passionate about, is the emotional component of food. I think it kind of brought to light all of the emotional eating that was occurring throughout her whole life. And, you know, when you make a shift that big, it's not just health, right? Like that whole spiritual and that whole self-awareness of like, why am I walking to the kitchen right now? Am I actually hungry? When I'm sad, why do I go get that piece of toast? Like it was that conscious, you know, I think recognition that we kind of went through together, where I'd be like, you know, and so I would say from an emotional standpoint, it was really difficult because it brought a lot of things to the surface. But from a physical standpoint, I think she's like the best she's ever had, because she's, you know, she wants to eat healthy, and she's realizing what she puts in her body directly impacts how she feels. And because she has MS, you know, for over 30 years now, her body is so sensitive. And so if she eats, you know, something that's really processed and has a lot of oils or gluten or just something that's unhealthy, I mean, she's got to go to bed. It knocks her system out. And so having that you know, watching her have this, you know, connection with food be redefined has been really encouraging for me. And so, and I've had the blessing to help a lot of people transition to plant-based diets as well, and watching them. And I always tell them, you know, they get all hyped in the beginning, but I'm like, there's going to be a moment where it hits you emotionally, and call me, let's walk through it. Like if you're having a moment where you're just like, you're having that realization emotionally, like it's really important to address it and walk through it. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest things I want to help people on is like create a space for them to talk about the emotional side of food. Because every bite you take is not just, you know, based on physiological needs. It is absolutely emotional.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say probably way more emotional than that. And so yeah, so it's been a really, you know, really great journey, and it's brought, you know, complete purpose to my life and everybody around me. And so I'm super grateful for it. And, you know, to this day, you know, when I give my mom, you know, a shot of wheatgrass, or I give her a, you know, an overnight oat that's full of like sprouted and amazing foods, it's an emotional connection. It's me giving her a piece of like my care and my love of like, I love you so much, and I think you deserve food at this quality. And it's completely changed our relationship as well. So
that's so cool. That's great. And I mean, really a great time right now, especially, you know, just being in that COVID era, is we need to like keep our body in its best possible running condition.
oh yeah.
And it's hard, you know, even when we're eating pure food, even when we're in a decent emotional space, stuff comes in.
Oh yeah.
You know, stuff you haven't asked for comes through, whether it's toxins in the air, whether it's just something that comes your way and rocks your day, and you weren't expecting some emotional, you know, instance with one person is going to affect something and bring up something from your past, and how that all relates. It's really fascinating. And it's like, I love to give myself the best opportunity, especially now. Like, what can I do to be in the best possible condition, so that I can be present for other people, so that I can also not just feel terrible. I mean, it's easy, and it's easy to see. When I think when you get to the point where you're specific about what kind of food goes in, because when we get into the world of veganism, that's massive too. Right? Vegan doesn't necessarily mean healthy anymore. You know, once upon a time it did, when you were just eating the fruits and the grains, but there's so much processed food, and there's so much junk food, and it's hard. And, you know, and then you've got just other factors. I was listening to Suzanne Summers on Darren Olean's podcast. And she, you know, she had brought up, like, once you have antibiotics, like your whole stomach, your whole bacteria system is forever, you know, messed up. And how many times does this happen? Not only through like just going to a doctor and having something happen and getting a course of antibiotics, but if you're eating a diet that's not vegan, like through your food, like we're being inundated with, or even in your drinking water to a certain degree, like depending on what kind of filtration system, like we're being exposed to so many things all the time.
That's, I always just say that it's our immune system is constantly on defense, and they're, you know, they're, I just call them like little hits. Like your body takes hits all day long, and most of the time we have no idea those hits are even occurring. You know, they're in our water, they're in the air, they're in the lotion we're putting on our body. You know, they're in all of these different capacities. And then on top of that, the food that we eat is literally half the time direct toxin. So it's like our body's just taking these hits. And that's why, you know, that was one of the reasons why I started the company, because I was just like, every food that I had at my, you know, disposal had, you know, there was always a pro and a con. Like, oh, this is a great salad, but the salad dressing is absolutely terrible. Or all this fruit on top is coated in sugar and oil. And like, there was always something that I was like, oh man, I wish this wasn't in there, but that's all I have right now. And,
Right.
you know, having foods that were like intentionally designed for nothing but health, like this didn't exist. And that's really what like got me going. Cause I was like, we're not set up for success in this country for health. Like we're just not, we're just
No.
set up for these constant like battles that our immune system is just so weakened. And my mom having an autoimmune disease, like really brought that super like right to my heart, because I was just like, you know, I don't want to develop this, but I was eating the same things and living the same lifestyle that she was.
Right.
We know through epigenetics that's, you know, the odds of that happening to you just jump up dramatically. And so, yeah, being able to recognize, you know, that it's just that self-awareness, you know, how many hits did my body take today? And like, what is something I have on my tool belt? I call it like a little, like literally I envision a tool belt, and it's like my little health tool belt. Like what is something that I can put on there that will help counteract that hit? You know, I can't control the pollution. I can't control the water all the time. And I can't control a lot of these products that I'm using and I'm exposed to, but what you put in your mouth is literally the only thing you have. No one will ever force you to eat something. That's the one thing you will always have. And so let's use it as a tool to like counteract all those hits. And so that's the way I think of food. You know, I had to really change my relationship with food, and I redefined it. I redefined it as fuel, you know? So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's even amazing when things creep in. Like I think sometimes when you get to the point, and I make decisions with my kids that honestly I don't eat myself. Like there is a difference in the way that I will eat versus the way my 17-year-old will eat versus my 14-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's just a reality in there. And you have to kind of teach and provide, like they get lots of really healthy meals in the house, but then they're also going to go out and get a vegan burger somewhere else, or eat an Impossible Burger, or all these other things that are out of my control. And you know, just I was stunned at, you know, you think like, okay, I know the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, and I've been mindful. And there was this big recent news story about the amount of, I believe it was like Roundup found in hummus, right? Was that it? Was it Roundup?
Yep.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, here I am thinking I'm so educated. I'm just, you know, and I'm not really paying attention because I don't know about, I guess, the realities of harvesting garbanzo beans. I knew it about wheat, but somehow, you know, I missed that one. And here my kids have been eating that for how long? And you think you're doing an amazing job. And, you know, I never really worried about organic hummus as much because it was a bean, and I wasn't really worried about the bean if it wasn't an oil in it. Like it depended. Like if it had canola oil in it, then fine, all right, it has to be organic. Like I kind of knew some guidelines, but here still they're being exposed to stuff, and I wasn't even just conscious about it.
Well, it's frustrating because you, as conscious of you as you are, imagine the average person that doesn't know, and that's where as an attorney, I got really frustrated because that's failure on the food regulatory system to make companies have to disclose what's in the food and what they've done to it. And then also like educate consumers on the effects of these foods. And that's like the frustrating part, because like, unless you care enough to dive into that research or to like really, which no one has time to do.
No, of course not.
You're not going to know. And this information is not out there. And oftentimes, unless like a third party company does this research, it's not going to happen. And so that's really what pushed me to want to start a food manufacturer and leave the practice I was at, because I knew that if change was really going to happen, and this is just a little insight, and I know most attorneys will agree with me on this one, but if you as attorneys, you realize that the regulatory systems and the courts and, they're decades behind what's actually is happening right now in real time, because all of these things have to occur. The products have to be put into the supply, and then people have to eat them for a decade or 2 decades. And then we start to see the effects. And then the lawsuits come out, and then like, it's a whole process. And, I was in school reading, all of these cases from different companies and different chemicals, in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. And it started kind of dawning on me like, oh my goodness, what are we doing now? Like, now there's over 6,000 chemicals in our food, man-made synthetic chemicals in the food supply that have circulated. And, only 2,000 of them have ever been tested, and not even to a specific standard. So it's like, knowing the system and how, and how backed up it is, and knowing the greed of the level right now of the top food manufacturers, putting all that together creates a perfect storm of having foods that are not only Franken foods, but that are just, made with such the highest level of processing to ever in our human history. And stacking all that together, right, really kind of lit the fire. It was like, if there's going to be change, it's not going to be the FDA and the regulatory system, because they don't have the resources to do it. Well, it's not going to be.
Do they have the drive to do it anyway? Like, that's
no way. No way.
Right? I mean, it's the more that you learn about just how the meat and dairy industry are tied to the FDA, they're tied to the government. It's such a mess that, the consumer is supposed to be the responsible party to know if something's healthy or not. And that's, it's not fair. And they know confusion is the best way to keep people, doing the same habit over and over again, just like the tobacco industry. And
absolutely,
it's challenging even for someone who considers themselves rather educated when it comes to food and food choices, and it's still difficult.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's when you dive into the food industry and you understand like just the distribution and the manufacturing channels. I mean, there is, the infrastructure is so old and outdated. There is so many startup companies are trying to do the right thing. But when it comes to actually making these products, they don't have the resources to start making new processes and using better ingredients, and because they have to use the existing infrastructure. So that's where you get these like better for you products, where they're a little bit better than what's out there now, but it's still not healthful to the body, right? It's just a little bit better than what we're eating. And so that's where it's like, I was really pushed to like have to push the boundaries and having to like, okay, we have to raise the standards here. We have to raise the bar. Like, how do we actually mass produce the most nutrient dense foods possible? And it's going to take a huge shift in the infrastructure. And it's unfortunately going to have to be more expensive, than that bag of Cheez-Its. And that's, but like everything, like the vegan movement has proven over the last, 6 to 7 years, is that the more demand, those prices, those literally more people wanting and eating these products, the prices will start to go down. So we're not, like imagine when vegan cheese, when it first came out, it was so expensive, and now it's a few bucks less. Right. And that's just, it's going to take us a little bit to get there, but because of social media and just because of the increased consciousness across this country, it's moving very quickly, which is an amazing thing. And so we see, even with my business, I see people seeking out products that are sprouted. So people now know what this means. And that's so exciting for me. That's what keeps me like motivated, is that like, when, especially from a legal perspective, when you see behind the scenes and you're so disheartened, to having a customer reach out and say that, they've never felt so good, and they've never like had consistent bowel movements of this way. And they just added one product 5 hours a day, like seeing that immediate effect of a customer actually having that self-awareness connection with their body makes all of it worth it so much. So yeah,
I think sprouts are having like it's like they're up and it's like their time. Yeah. They're no longer reading, whose book I'm reading is, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of,
Is it Doug Evans?
No. I've read his book. I've had him on. He's great. And in fact, a friend of mine is going out to Alex Sharmas, who's been on the podcast. He's going with his wife to stay at Doug's place in the desert. Oh, and I think next week, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to tell me everything about it, because he's a doctor. He's incredible. He's bringing out like Dr. Greger and Michael Clapper, but he's doing all these great things. So I'm really, really lucky to have him as a friend and a yoga buddy. And but no, I was reading the Tofurky book. I can't remember the founder's name right now, but like, he had started back with his tempeh years and years ago. But you think of sprouts and you think of like, that sandwich. There's what is that cheese? There's a cheese company that has this little place in Chatsworth, back in California.
Follow your heart.
Follow your heart. Yes.
Yep.
So I've been to this little Follow Your Heart restaurant that is so like 1970s. Wasn't updated when I went there. Still like the wheat sandwich with like the big thing of sprouts, and it's just like. But now sprouts are like totally having this different heyday. Yeah, it's it's the same but different, and it's really fun to see people getting excited about food, and also sprouting is a way for people to low income people to have their own nutrition at a very, very low cost, and
Absolutely.
It's kind of brilliant. So you got into raw food. So are you high raw now? Are you all raw? Or are you? You're just
like I
conscious
said, I try
about
not to
it.
put percentage. I'm just conscious about it. I really go based on how I feel. If I feel like if I feel a little bit low in my digestion, I'm gonna up it. I'm gonna up my raw for that meal. It really is just responding to myself. But I would say I always like to err on the side of at least 51% raw, and it's kind of what the research shows. So yeah, but I definitely, I'm also human. So I had a birthday that I went to yesterday, and I had a little bit of, some vegan cake. But then I also had a huge mouthful of sprouts after. So it's that, it's that conscious, just awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. It's interesting to see like kind of where everybody falls with that. Okay. So yoga. Let's talk yoga for a couple minutes, and then we're just going to talk about your food too, because I love it. Let's get into the food industry. So yoga, how did that come into your life?
Yeah. So I first, it was actually pretty funny. I guess I get a little personal. I grew up, very religious. And, kind of yoga was always seen as something that was like super esoteric and like kind of hands off. And that I never really was practice until actually college course. So an elective that I took in college was yoga. And I realized that it, whatever my impression of yoga was, it wasn't at all. It's this incredible meditative, but physical. It is what you make it. And so in this course, this yoga, the first yoga teacher I had, it was a very like chill vinyasa flow type of yoga course. And it was like a 7 p.m. at night course. So I had classes all day, and I would go to this yoga. And when that semester ended, I was like, I need to do this every day. Like that was the moment I was looking forward to, was that yoga class that it was mandatory to take. And after that, you know, like as extreme as I am, I was like, ooh, and then I fell into Bikram. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like then it was like a workout, but it was also still meditative. And then I was like
Right.
sweating and it was really challenging. I was an athlete, so I was just like, oh, I love the challenge. You know, and then I suddenly kind of got back into, you know, the vinyasa. And it's, to me, I kind of use yoga as one of my main forms of meditation. Like you mentioned, you know, on other podcasts, like it is meditation, you know, it is very much this beautiful moment with yourself and just pure connection with your body and forcing you to just go inward completely. And so I use yoga and, you know, we all have like specific goals of like, I try not to get too like structure to myself, like you have to do an hour or you have to do this and you have to do this video. Like, I try to give myself that leeway of like, how do I feel? And then, you know, those are the beautiful moments where you get lost and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I've been doing this for, you know, an hour now. And so I kind of use it like that. I like to do it first thing in the morning. And I also like at our facility, and we're actually in the process of building out a brand new facility. I'm actually putting in a yoga room for all of our team members.
Oh, that's so cool.
So they can just, whenever they want, go take a break and just, you know, go do some flows and just go have that space, because I feel like, you know, I use it throughout the day. Even if it's 4 or 5 minutes, I'll just go do some down dogs. And it's amazing what it does to your nervous system. It just resets, you know? And so I love yoga. It's definitely, something that I realized, like, as I kind of started diving into it a little bit, that initially was very much connected to a very high raw plant-based diet. They were very much a synergistic cleansing and healing and connection process. And I think, you know, one of your missions is like, you kind of saw that loss of how it became much more of an exercise trendy thing instead of this really intentional, conscious, you know, awareness of your body, and food is a huge part of that. You know, whatever you put into your bloodstream and when you do yoga is going to be circulated throughout your whole body. And, you know, the food that you ate that day is just as important as the yoga that you're going to do. Like they literally are, you know, biologically they're working together very intensely. And so I kind of look at yoga as like, okay, I ate the good food. Now I'm going to do yoga to get it throughout every cell in my body. So I think they're like brother and sister, you know, they're very tight.
No, it's fun. And it's fun to see like how different foods affect your practice and affect what you're feeling in your body. I mean, there's some things, you know, my husband will always laugh because it's like, if we went out, I'd know the next day, I go, oh, you know, that tortilla was not organic. It's like, and he'll laugh because he's like, she could feel this weird stuff, like not, you know, not so much in normal days. It doesn't really affect me. You know, getting up, walking around, being stiff, that kind of thing. But you can feel these nuances in the practice. And I found at times when I'm doing spiritual trainings, like when I'm doing a super high raw diet, there's a lightness to your body, and there's almost a different relationship to gravity. I know that sounds weird, but I feel it's true. Yeah. And it wouldn't matter if, like, say you lost, I don't know, let's say you were 2 pounds lighter because you ate something that just didn't weigh as much, right? Whatever. And you could be that same 2 pounds lighter, and it would depend on what you ate versus how you would feel lightness in your body. It's really just crazy to feel that difference. Or you could even be heavier and still feel lighter. It's very curious to see how those energetics work. And I think it's kind of fascinating. And I like to play and just see. It doesn't mean I always stay in that one place, because for me, it becomes a little too intense to always be like, I'll be very clean and direct about the practice of food, but then I'll have to break it too.
Contrast is key. You know, I think that's, I always have to remind myself whenever I, you know, get very intense, or, you know, it really is the blessing of the gratitude that comes from contrast. So, you know, how amazing you feel those days you eat really healthy. So the days that, you know, you're not going to, you appreciate that so much more, and you look forward to the next food choice where you can get closer to that good feeling. So yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like there's a huge connection between, you know, raw foods and just so many aspects of our physiology. And, you know, unfortunately, like the dollars and research have not been spent there, in the last 4 or 5 decades. And so, but the exciting thing is that the research is going there. And that's what my company's being a huge part of that movement, is like, we're putting a ton of money into looking at what is actually happening when we eat something that's completely raw and still full of life versus something that's been processed 18 times. Like, there is a difference. And it's so bizarre that, you know, our nutritional, you know, educators haven't really questioned that and haven't really wanted, you know, to know, like, what is the difference between, you know, a piece of broccoli that was cooked versus that wasn't, or, you know, some wheat flour that went through the traditional processing versus one that was sprouted. And it's bizarre because it's like back to the basics, but we see a lot of research now coming out that's really starting to shed the science behind it. And that's what I geek out about all the time. Like, that's what Foodnerd is about. It's like, let's talk about what's happening when we eat these raw foods.
So let's do that. Tell me, because that's fascinating. I mean, it is interesting. It doesn't surprise me the research isn't there, because for somebody to get to the point where they're willing to use their body almost as an experiment and go beyond what's dictated as your nutritional information from whatever the side of a cereal box or wherever I got it as a child, like, it takes a while to even put your body in a different place that you understand there's a difference. And a lot of people don't even understand there is, because they simply are so unknowingly polluted through what's just been going into their systems. So what have you discovered about sprouted foods and what they do to your body?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things you just mentioned is that unless you've experienced, you know, your health is subjective. So if you're used to feeling, you know, low energy and that's your average energy, you don't know what it feels like to have higher energy and to have, you know, just more clarity in your thoughts. So if you don't know what that level is, you're not going to be pushed or motivated to do it. But once you experience, you know, once you go up a week of going plant-based, or a week of just increasing the raw fruits and vegetables in your diet, you're going to start to feel that increase. And then you're not going to want to feel like garbage anymore. And you're going to start to look at the way you used to feel as like the old way. And it sets new standards for yourself. And when I went raw plant-based, it was really in law school. Honestly, I was exhausted because I was working full-time and full-time school, and which you're not supposed to do, but I had to. I was putting myself through school. And so I was just exhausted. So I started studying, you know, the gut-brain communication, and realizing that the food, and I always say that in its perfect equation, it's raw equation, where the fibers are completely raw. All of the minerals and vitamins, amino acids, phytochemicals, they're all in their natural intact form. That's when they interact with the body the best. So that's when they're the most bioavailable. And so if you want to literally have the best digestion, which translates to better healing and repairing of your cells, right? If you want to be your best self, you really want to have the cleanest, most, you know, enzymatically and most active, as well as the most bioavailable food. And that's just raw food, right? I mean, you know, it's weird when people are like, oh, that's weird, you eat raw food. And it's just because we're so used to not. But I look at the opposite. I'm like, you don't think that it's weird that we're the only species on the planet that processes our food this way? You know, it's really, we lost that symbiotic connection to nature, where it's like, you know, it's almost like, I always have to think of it being in the food, you know, science realm, looking at food scientists. It's kind of like, we like to think that we are smarter than nature, and like, oh, I'm going to manipulate the food and do this, and this, where it's like,
right.
Nature is so intelligent, and raw food proves that. It proves literally when you leave nature in its natural equation and you let it break down in the body the way it's supposed to, you will have such higher levels of energy, and you will have so many of the compounds that get destroyed through heating. So for example, 85% of us in America are deficient in roughly 85% of our micronutrients, which is the micronutrients, your minerals, vitamins, enzymes, phytochemicals. those are the functionality and the quality of your cells, where your macronutrients, fats, carbs, proteins, that's just energy. But when it comes to like how well and how quickly our cells are functioning, you need those micronutrients. But when you're eating predominantly cooked and very, very processed foods, those nutrients get completely denatured or destroyed. And so that's where raw foods come in. Even if you're, and it doesn't have to be anything intense, just get more raw foods into your diet and your body will start to absorb more nutrients, will start to store those nutrients, and you will start to have that recovery process happen a lot faster. So I could dive into so many things about raw foods and why they're more beneficial. So I'll let you kind of, I don't want to geek out too hard. So I'll let you kind of tell me what you want to know, but it's, it really goes down to it's the nutrients, and then your body's ability to, one, identify them, and then, break them down and assimilate them into the metabolism. That's really it. How do we get these nutrients where they need to go in the body, working with the proper cofactors? And, raw foods, best way to do it for sure.
And is that newer? It's newer science. Like the word phytochemical, the first time I ever even heard it was through Dr. Joel Fuhrman.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. And
that's awesome.
That's where I was first introduced to that word. Mm-hmm. Because I think, people, if we just looked at the back of a nutrition, panel of a box, what is it? It's like, does it have calcium? Does it have
four?
It's like a couple things. And growing up, you might think, well, I just need these things.
Right. And that's exactly where the nutritional research over the last few, 100 years has failed us, because we're trying to identify and label things, minerals and vitamins and phytochemicals, right, but there's thousands upon thousands of them that are in the food that we haven't identified that are, just extremely important and crucial for our health, right? We call them the essential minerals and vitamins that we need, the ones that we know that thus far research has proven we need these. But, the unfortunate thing is, like, unless you're aware of that, and unless you know where they actually appear in what foods and in what state, you look at something and you're like, oh, that must be healthy for me because it's an oat, right? Oats are healthy. Right. But then what happened to that oat to get it into that oat bar, right? Or that granola or whatever it is that you're eating, what actually is left in there because it was so processed? Because those micronutrients are very delicate. They're very sensitive to heat and pH imbalance, to pressure. You're taking a plant, right? Plants are living organisms that are actually have like these incredible, biological processes that are happening, and they're supposed to happen as we're actually chewing it, right? So there's a symbiotic relationship as we're eating these raw foods. Our digestive system is communicating with it, and vice versa. And the plant is breaking itself down, and we're breaking it down. And but now when you eat something that's super processed, it's everything has been completely cooked and destroyed. You're really just getting such a small fraction of what you're supposed to get from it, which is why we eat so much too, because we're not getting the nutrients. So we're still hungry.
Right.
Which is why, I used to be able to eat like a whole pizza myself, and I'm not, I'm about 120-pound person.
Yeah, you're not very big.
how can I eat a whole pizza? Because the pizza didn't have any nutrients in it, and your body was like, okay, I got the macros, but where's my vitamin C? Where's my magnesium? And so I found myself, that's why you're so hungry after you eat something really processed, and you go back for more and you go back for more. Where if you eat a giant bowl of sprouts, your body, that gut-brain communication is going to occur so rapidly, you're going to be full. That's like for the overnights, for example. People are like, oh my God, they're so filling. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, it's because it's living, and your body's saying, oh, I know that compound. I can identify this. Oh, that fiber, perfect. And it turns off those hunger hormones, right? Because it actually is working. It's doing what it's supposed to do,
And I think to a certain degree, we probably need, or at least for the amount that I exercise versus the amount of calories that go in, mm-hmm, they're not that high.
Right.
Because much of my food is raw. It's all whole foods. Mm-hmm. Lots of sprouts as well now. So I think what we've been told can be a different number based on the quality of food that is going into the system. And something I've noticed also, because, you know, I play with, like, if you're pure raw for a while, I found that you can get away, or I can get away with less sleep. Not get away as in I'm setting my alarm earlier, but I'm waking up earlier. Or go, you know, another thing, like eating your food earlier in the day so that you're not spending your rest time digesting food. Your body can actually go to work beyond that one process. Do you think there is a discrepancy in the amount of calories that need to be consumed, and how we should look at that?
Oh, absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
as consumers?
Mm-hmm. No, and a lot of that, we have to realize that, you know, the FDA, their nutritional research actually, like, it changes and it updates every 4 years, right?
Okay.
And so our guidelines are, you know, a new piece of research can come out tomorrow, and it's not going to see public until another 4 years from now, because so we're also, you know, a decade or two behind in general on the research. So, you know, our guidelines and our standards for, you know, the RDAs, they're not up to date. They're not up to 2020. So, you know, and those numbers were created to keep people, you know, pretty much not starving, right? So, like, it wasn't on high functionality. How can you be the healthiest person? It was, hey, how can we make sure that you're not starving? How you're getting sufficient macro and micronutrients in to the point where you're going to wake up tomorrow, you're going to have energy to go to work. So it's like the standard was really created on the bare minimum. But that's really where I want to push the standard. Okay, well, how do we intentionally start eating and formulating and in manufacturing food that is designed for a human to become the superhuman, essentially? Like, how do we eat in a way that's really intelligent, that's based on research that shows, you know, and that's what you mentioned, like eating with your body. When are you hungry? When is it best for you to eat? Based on your energy levels, based on your activity, you know, based on your activity and your expenditure and all these varying factors. And that's where, you know, a lot of research is, I think, that's what the next 10 years is really going to start. Like, the technology, I think, is really going to push that forward of, you know, all these different wearables and all these different aspects and customization platforms of what's specific to me. You know, when I eat really late at night, I have terrible sleep, you know, and that's something that can be kind of seen across the board for average people, but it may be different for you and I. You know, you may do a yoga practice and that may switch your metabolism. And there's so many different compounding factors for diet. But that's where, you know, I'm so excited about the next few years, because we're going to have these tools and we're going to be able to eat things that were just, you know, just intelligently designed for a specific need. So yeah, I'm super geeked about it.
Is there somewhere that the average consumer can look at to get more up-to-date information about what food is, you know, the recent research on food, or something that's a little more digestible just for, like, the layperson to understand? Where would somebody go?
Honestly, I would say Dr. Michael Greger's, his website, nutritionfacts.org. I mean, he definitely, I love him. He's incredible. He summarizes the most recent nutritional research, literally weekly. And his videos are short, concise, super easy to understand. I would say that's the best resource for anybody to use. And then if you know, and that's, you know, where I'm excited with Foodnerd is like, okay, so now how can we actually create the tools to mirror what's coming out in the research, right? So that's the premises of the company. So now we know broccoli sprouts are incredible for people who have, you know, cancer and autism and all these, you know, these health conditions. So how can we create these foods that have broccoli sprouts in them? And how can we actually make the tools available? And so I would say, from a research perspective, Dr. Greger, you know, Dr. Neil Barnard, all of those leading, you know, researchers that are starting to push the boundaries.
It was PCRM, right? Physicians.
Yes, PCRM. Yep. Responsible committee. Yes.
Yeah. Physicians Committee for Responsible
Responsible,
Medicine.
yes.
There, we
Yes.
got it out. Okay.
Got it.
I was like, what is that? I know it's something, but yeah, that's a great resource as well. And those, it is good to know. That's usually where I send people as well. I just didn't know if there was something a little bit more in the know that I needed to know about. Okay, so 2 questions, because I want to get to your food as well. But the first question, let's talk about food and how it affects your emotions, because part of the reason, and something that I learned because I do these weekly now water fasts. So it's like every time I talk to you, I haven't had anything to eat that day. But but it's good because it teaches you to kind of understand when you're actually hungry and what it feels like. And to have an opportunity to disconnect from the almost emotional addiction is kind of the relationship. It becomes almost a meditation where I can look at, oh, when do I grab this? What does that mean? Why am I doing such things? But I think a lot of people who are just living, just a normal life, they open the fridge and eat food and just enjoy their days, don't really understand quite what it means to feel hungry, and to be hungry. So something that I had experienced, my daughters have experienced, just from going from a standard American diet to vegetarian then vegan when we did it, was there was an emotional connection with food, as far as almost even like an anxiety that I believe that we were consuming. Perhaps also from the energetics of the food. When you're eating processed food, it's dead food, of course. So like you're not getting anything there. But I think also when it comes to meat and dairy, you're also consuming some of that almost energetic intelligence of the food. Have you found any information about that? What have you learned? Beyond just kind of what I speculate might be happening based on just my own experience and my daughters.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a few things to unpack there, because, when you think of the energy, because food is energy, when you think of it like that, the word energy, I think for a lot of people can go right to like some esoteric meaning where it's like, oh, energy. But that's kind of the cool thing about like quantum physics and quantum biology, and these really amazing, studies that have been done the last decade or two of really showing, okay, so at its essence, like we know that cherry tomato or that strawberry is this living organism that has these incredible, parts and components that are like actively, still living as you're eating it, right? And we know that those enzymes, if you ever want to just geek out, just dive into enzymes and just like watch a YouTube video at what enzymes are. They're just like the most incredible catalyst for digestion. They literally are the catalyst for every metabolic process that happens in the body. There has to be an enzyme that triggers it. So they're like the little worker bees. And the amazing thing about that is like when it comes to trying to measure the energy of raw food versus cooked food, there's been not a ton, but, I hope to help facilitate this research and work with incredible collaborators on it. But there's been research where, you can actually take images of the electromagnetic, photography, different types of technologies that are out there nowadays. And you can actually see the energy force that's coming off of a strawberry that was cooked versus a strawberry that's raw. And it's night and day. Like you can literally see the electromagnetic field extending outside,
Right.
which is super amazing. But also like, I can imagine how people are like, well, that's too esoteric for me. But physics is starting to show, okay, like let's keep going deeper and deeper into these cells and then let's see how our body's responding to it. And, one of the theories I always talk about is, I think is the enzymes. Let's go back to, what happens when these enzymes are present. And when you have a food that's raw, most of the enzymes are still intact. And I think that's really where the research is going to start like pushing the next 10 years of like, okay, what's biologically happening when we're consuming these? And, from an energetic standpoint, when you're eating something, for example, like sprouted, like a sprouted buckwheat or a sprouted oat versus a milled or cooked version of that, or a flour, algodote flour, is we know that it's, 3 to 6 times more bioavailable, which means, taking that seed, right, which they're both seeds, taking that seed and letting it go through its natural biologic process of germination, it's changing the entire molecular structure of that seed. And it's activating, turning on and off different processes. And so it's literally changing its physiology. So you're not only eating something that's molecularly different, and so of course the energy that your body's going to receive from that is different. And we're actually working with a really incredible lab that's based out of MIT, and looking to see like what exactly changes. So we're actually measuring, say for example, one of our products is sprouted oat, how the vitamin E that's in it, the vitamin E in our sprouted oat versus one of our competitors' regular oatmeal. Ours is 3 times more bioavailable, just the vitamin E, right? So imagine like how much we don't know about these raw sprouted foods and the communication that's happening with our digestive system as we're ingesting them. That's just very exciting.
Because you could eat, just with that alone, you could eat a third.
Exactly.
And be the same.
And that's why when you said that, you said you feel like you're eating less food, but you're so much more energized. And it really is quality over quantity. It really is, your body is our bodies are just amazing. They're just so intelligent. And when we give it the tools it needs, when we give it the complete spectrum of micronutrients, it goes to work and it starts distributing those micronutrients and using them, and amazing things happen. And then on the flip side of that is when we're deficient in that, when we're eating all this processed, just dead food, right?
Yeah.
Our body has to kind of compromise, and sometimes it pays Peter, or is it rob Peter to pay Paul? That's what happens, right? So, if our brain needs a nutrient, and it will always favor the brain over your kidney, right? Or your liver. And so it will start to compromise. And that's why I'm like, eat as many raw fruits and vegetables in as many different colors as possible, just to make sure you're getting as many different nutrients. And then, let your body do what it's meant to do, and so, regardless of if people have to take a stance of, I think we should have cooked food versus raw food. I've never met somebody where I showed them an orange that was raw and freshly cut up, and then I showed them, a cooked orange, and I was like, which one's healthier? Every person just knows instinctually that raw orange is going to be better for you. So it's something, it's intuitive to us to eat more raw foods and to feel good.
What about if they're frozen? What happens?
Yeah. So frozen is the next best thing, right? So
it is. Okay.
Raw is key. Freezing preserves a huge portion of, it depends on the temperature and how long, and is it exposed to, how long has it been in there? But 85 plus of the nutrients.
So it's still good to take. Yeah.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. Because that's a lot easier sometimes when it comes to smoothies, and smoothies are great ways to like get a good portion of raw food all in one little, glass. Absolutely. Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Okay. So my gosh, I could talk to you for, okay. I told you I know it's like, I can't keep anything into a very small time frame, but, okay, let's just compare, because I want to segue into sprouted foods, which that was my next question, but you sort of got there anyway. Let's talk about just the government cheese. Let's get back to the government cheese for just a moment.
Yes.
Because, you have firsthand experience in watching, like, what did it do to your own body? How did it affect, your mom? Like when you have a genetic disposition to some sort of outcome, you don't have to have that outcome. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have those genes necessarily express themselves, given the right opportunity to stay well, right?
Epigenetics.
I think we have I think it's like 80% or something, 85. It's high, isn't it? The number's pretty high up there. So what, like a government cheese, what is in a government cheese? Why do we have a government cheese? And quickly. And then we're going to segue into what that difference is to something that is sprouted and what it can what it can do?
So, for example, and when I say government cheese, you really have to think craft cheese. That's what I'm saying. That fake
Like
orange, floppy,
movie
weird.
theater drippy
Yes,
cheese, right? Okay.
exactly. And I remember I used to get a huge block of it. And so basically, processed foods, like in general, really kind of emerged after World War II. And I'll just give real quick facts. So basically, the Secretary of Agriculture, Earl Butz, he was actually under Nixon and Ford. He put in an act, a bill of legislation that basically started subsidizing crops that were very cheap and to grow, and started subsidizing them. And I'll just say the top 5. So sugar, corn, rice, wheat, and dairy. Those are the top 5. And so what happened is, basically he told all farmers, instead of having these diverse lands and you're producing all these different foods, just pump out as much corn, wheat, or dairy as you can. Just pump it out and we will find a way to sell it. And what that did is that dropped the price. So these things became extremely cheap. But then what it did is it literally like cut the diversity of all the food that we have at our disposal, right? So now we have these 5 top foods that are in everything. And what happened is the government was like, okay, now we need to hire these food scientists and, these large food manufacturers. And I could talk about that for days, but they started hiring these food scientists and saying, okay, we have corn. What are 50 to 100 different things we can do with this corn to put it in as many form factors and many products as possible, right? Because people are just going to corn on the cob, bam, number 1. But then, okay, we need to put it into a soda. We need to make it into cheese, or we need to make it into an oil, right? So basically, government cheese actually came out of this whole legislation act where it was like, they took corn and they're like, all right, we're going to make oil from it. We're going to make all these byproducts, and we're going to take the dairy and we're going to blend them together. And now we have this thing called government cheese, where it's like super processed dairy, and just a ton of added oils, from wheat, corn, soy.
Yeah,
And
if the cheese wasn't fatty enough.
exactly. And
You need more.
they were cutting it like 50-60% more of these oils.
Wow.
And then, of course, to make it palatable, because now you have this dull, nothing tasting product, let's add all of this sodium, and then now we have to color it. So let's add, we need some artificial colors to go in there. And now we also need it to taste good. So then we get the artificial flavors in. And that's something I'm super passionate about. And so now you have this processed block of just food-like substance that we call cheese. That is literally mirrors nothing in nature. Like,
Yeah.
that is, but you can produce it it's basically made up of all byproducts. So you take all these byproducts of all these crops, you make this thing, you basically form it together, you let it age, and then you basically just ship it out to a bunch of people, and you tell them to eat grilled cheese every day. You tell them to put it on their breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you start pushing out, double cheese, extra cheese, and now
Right.
now our bodies are used to it. And Dr. Neil Barnard will talk about the casomorphines that are in cheese and why they're addictive. So I literally associated my childhood with grilled cheese. Like, that was my childhood. And it was because they're biologically addictive foods, and they're cheap. So the impact that I felt on my body, I mean, you feel, one, always hungry. You're always craving it. You're always thinking about it. And then if you don't, nothing else will satisfy it. So if you're craving a grilled cheese, a salad is not going to satisfy you. It's that emotional connection we talked about there. So yeah, so I'm very, it disheartens me, but also excites me about the potential of, getting people off of these foods and educating them on. I know it seems like you're trading cost for nutrients, but when you eat better quality foods, you eat less, and you can actually save money, right? So what can we do with that sweet potato to make it mirror cheese? Or what can we do to get these healthier foods into your system? And just like anything else, when people start becoming more educated and they start saying, no, I don't want to put that in my body, I don't want that, the system's going to have to change. And that's kind of what we see now. And I just, I really push for other vegan food manufacturers to do the right thing. Like, I know it's easy to make a cheap vegan alternative cheese with all these processed oils and all these processed ingredients, but don't do it, because we know it's a step in the right direction, but let's give people nutrients, and that's really why, like, all of the products that we've created, and I'll do a little sneak preview. Maybe we do have an awesome cheese that may come out one day. But food should be designed for first nutrition and then taste. That should be the equation. And so, yes, government cheese. It is.
Wow.
It sums up the politics of our food supply. In very one product right there.
So on to sprouted, food, on to what you have. I love your stuff. Okay. First of all, it's so funny.
Thank you.
You sent me some, I love that it's easy, right? Like, so I look at like your cereals and like buckwheat, which a lot of people don't eat buckwheat. I love buckwheat. So you've got overnight buckwheat, oats, and chia. Right. Yeah. And they're all sprouted.
All sprouted.
Which means you're getting like your 3 for 1, right? I think
absolutely
3 times the power of this food. But it's also simple. Like, it doesn't require a lot to put together, and it's something that people can bring, I think, which is nice too. People now, I was thinking like, well, when we were competing for dance all the time and spending the night, that would be a great thing, because I kind of make my own concoction of an overnight, but it's not as healthy if it's not sprouted. So I love that you put these things together. So I want you to talk a little bit about those products, but also I just have to say, like, your anytimes, I can't remember the name, but it's like your fruity one.
Yes. Yeah.
It was, okay. I am so far removed from eating processed food anymore, but they were like, if you could make a fruity pebble, I was like, exactly. Oh my God, these are healthy fruity pebbles was what yes. That's what I got from it. But you have even, is it the broccoli sprout? There's broccoli something in there, which I thought was, yeah.
Yep. So I'll tell you the ingredients right now, for example, and that's amazing because this formula that we call it Fruity Fantasy, the Anytimes, which we're launching very soon, within, just a shy of 2 months. And, my nephew who has autism, that's all he wants is cereal, and Fruity Pebbles is just like, it broke my heart because all those artificials, in there, the colors and the flavorings, and then it's just pure sugar and it's pure processed foods. So I was like, there's no way a bowl of oats is ever going to compete with a bowl of Fruity Pebbles. Like, I don't care who you are. You could be the healthiest person in the world, but there's no comparison. So how are we going to get kids to eat healthier? And so I was really motivated to help, find foods that I can get into my nieces and nephews. Because, and so literally that's what these products are. They're literally, I'll tell you ingredients. So they're,
that's so funny. You had that in mind, because that's what came to me. I was like, oh my gosh.
That makes me so, like, you have no idea, that makes me so happy, because I was R&Ding that product forever. And the fact that you knew it was Fruity Pebbles, like, yes. So it literally is sprouted flax, broccoli sprouts, dates, organic strawberries, wild blueberries, spirulina, turmeric, lemon, lime, and orange, and stevia.
Okay, that's insane, because there are so many good things for you that people don't even get. Like, that's incredible on so many different levels.
Like,
you've got like your omega-3s in there. You've got your anti-cancer, like 2 times, at least from turmeric, right? 2 times. I'm like, I think that's such a cool thing. I tried it with milk, and then I also had with almond milk. Like, I did both. Like, super cool. So that kind of blew my mind from what Fruity Pebble would I ever eat? And that was definitely something I could see happening. So that was pretty cool.
And that was the main reason, that I tried to start with, to create these products, was because it's like, now that we've been subjected to these processed foods, our body and our taste buds now know them. And to expect people to make these drastic changes, like jump from eating Fruity Pebbles, and, cake and banana bread and muffins, to jump from that to eating, you know, something insanely healthy is like a green smoothie. It's just, it's not emotionally satisfying. So all of our products were designed to help, you know, help the emotional you and then help the physical you become healthier, because there's always both in every bite. And that's really where, you know, Foodnerd, that's really why we were founded. It's like, how do we make processed light foods, but that are not processed, that are completely raw and sprouted and incredible for you, but we're letting you feed that inner child too, you know, and that's kind of where, that's what the formulations are based on. So I'm excited to see people, you know, feel like they can be emotionally satisfied by the food, but also insanely nutritionally satisfied as well. And so I'm super pumped for us to launch these. So
yeah, that was super cool. And okay, so you've got, do you want to just show, because we're doing something new.
Yes.
So for those of you on audio, I finally have come out of a hole here, and I'm starting to put up video. So we'll put it in the show notes otherwise with links to them. But go ahead and just kind of show me what your products look like, some of the things, and if there's anything you want to, you know, show that I don't know about, that's cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, these are overnight. So they're basically like little grab and go breakfast, or you can have them as any meal. But basically all you do is you add a cup of your favorite milk. I suggest like an almond milk or an oat milk. You add 1 cup and you just shake it up, put it in your fridge. And then in the morning, you have a complete nutrient dense, organic, raw, sprouted superfood meal. And we have, like you said, the buckwheat, the chia, and the sprouted oat. We have them in 6 different flavors. There's no sugar, there's no oil, there's no natural flavors. We're the first company really to just use whole fruits and vegetables. So this is our sprouted buckwheat strawberry plum, which is my absolute favorite, and it's sprouted buckwheat, chia seeds, strawberries, and plum. Like 4 ingredients, absolutely incredible for you. And this right here probably has about 50 to 60% of your daily fiber. So if you get this in for breakfast, you're good. Like you're good. You will hit your other 50% and across the other meals throughout the day. But this one right here, like the overnights, will guarantee you will go to the bathroom every day. That's what those are, you know, which is really important because most people don't. And it's so there's so much thought and care and love that goes into every food product that we make. The formulations are really based on the science of digestion and bioavailability, and also emotion and taste. So I really hope that people, you know, can feel that when they eat the products. And the anytimes, which we talked about, those are our grab and go snacks. We call them, you know, superfoods anywhere, anytime. So literally you can have your sprouts wherever you're at, and you don't have to have your little mason jar full of raw sprouts. You can just grab these and go. These are the 2 flavors we have right now, which are banana bread, which literally just tastes like you're eating little delicious crunchy pieces of banana bread, and then fruity fantasy. And then we also have dark chocolate raspberry. And we also have some savory ones coming out as well, which is super exciting. So check out our website. If you have any questions about anybody listening about the products, reach out to us. We're super excited about, about starting this conversation in the vegan space, but just in the food space in general. So let's eat more sprouted foods, and let's eat more foods that, you know, are backed by science.
So cool. It's so cool. It makes me so happy. It's like, you know, because that was something that I was telling you, I think last time that we talked, there just aren't a lot of sprouted foods even available in the market in the health food stores. Right. You know, there's 1 or 2 brands that I can think of offhand. So it's really neat to see a different take on it, and, you know, hopefully start to get people thinking differently about how they have the power to heal their bodies, but you have to put the right kind of fuel in. You have to give your body a chance. And it does sometimes take a little bit of time to get past, you know, your just emotional habits and allow the body to reset, you know, just like you do in yoga, just like you do in, you know, when you're doing some sort of cleanse. It's almost a rebirth of how your relationship to your body and what it can do for you and keep you healthy. So, oh my gosh, we'd go on forever. I'm going to stop it because I just go on and on and on and on. But I'm so thrilled that I got to talk to you again. How can people find you?
Yeah, so they can find us Foodnerd, foodnerdinc.com, and then pretty much on all social media platforms. Type in Foodnerd. We're the little nerd emoji. You'll see that on there. Please reach out to us, like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, contact us, because we are here to help people go through this health journey, with us, and go along with this, follow our research and help us push everybody in the direction of more raw sprouted foods. So yeah, feel free to reach out, but I'm super grateful that you had me on here. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Oh, of course. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.